Let's continue our discussion on the numerical methods in OpenACC. Um, and one of the important aspects that we studied in the context of numerical methods earlier in both MPI as well as OpenMP is um when there is some sort of dependence across nearby elements in a stencil computation. What does that mean? That uh, f of ij that you compute at a particular, let's say, node inside, let's say, a grid or a mesh, this particular computation is dependent on the neighboring elements, and these neighboring elements are a specialized form of neighbors. So in such cases, such a computation, although it involves this sort of a dependence which stops you from parallelizing it directly, because of this dependence, but by remodeling it as two different kinds of computations, you can remove this dependence, or at least take care of them when you separate them in time. Right? When they are all happening at the same time across all ij, then there is data dependence, and because of which this loop carry dependence, therefore you are unable to parallelize. And if you write such a code, especially in OpenACC, and leave it to the compiler will say, I am unable to process, I am unable to parallelize this, so let me run it sequentially. So one of the ways in which we have studied this helps is by converting this all of these ij space into two parts, one involving the red processing, another involving the black processing. And the red processing and black processing are separated in time, and they are designed in such a way that red always reads from black, and black always reads from red, and therefore there is, and since they are separated in time, the data race also gets separated, that is accessing the same memory location in the context of OpenACC also gets separated, and therefore you won't be able to get that data race. Right? So this is a very specialized processing. This doesn't always apply to all kinds of uh, data races or loop carry dependencies. But when you have this specialized form at that time, such stencil computation can be converted into red-black processing. So what we are going to do now is to look at how to model this computation using a red-black processing, similar to what we did in case of OpenMP and MPI. So just to put it in more concrete terms, A of ij is going to be a function of itself. I'm using plus equal to, but it could be an arbitrary function of that. Well, I should have probably not written plus equal to, it should be equal to, because I'm specifying A of ij here. And then it is also uh, uh, is computed using the values of the previous row's element, that is its immediate upper neighbor, then in the same row the previous neighbor, in the same row the next neighbor, and in the next row the down neighbor. Right? So these are the four elements that we need to read from, and so in some sense this particular ij is reading from these four neighbors. Right? And that turns out to be a very special form of stencil computation. And the same thing is done by others. For example, this is being read here, this is being read here, and so on. Right? As well as in the other way around. Right? So the black one is also reading from the red neighbor on its left, and so on. So when you have such a processing, you will be able to, you cannot parallelize it arbitrarily. In some cases, if the computational aspects allow, you can actually run with, by taking care of this data race, and run it uh, uh, in parallel across all. But the data, by taking care of this data race, meaning that you add some sort of synchronization, let's say using a critical section or an atomic instruction, etc. But doing, this is not allowed always from the semantics of the numerical computation, but you can do it only when it is allowed. And if you do that unfortunately, the cost of this synchronization turns out to be very large. And therefore, going for a critical section or an atomic instruction may not be a viable solution from performance perspective, although semantically you will get the correct answer. Therefore, we go for not such a fine-grained synchronization, but more like a coarse-grained synchronization. What is a coarse-grained synchronization? A barrier is a coarse-grained synchronization. So we separate the computation in terms of time and say that I'm going to perform all these subset of computations together. So in this case, we are going to say that all the red ones are going to happen together, all the black ones are going to happen later after a barrier. So this barrier is also a synchronization, but it is coarse across all threads. It's not the individual thread which is performing this atomic or critical section. And therefore, this is called as a coarse-grained synchronization. So once you have that, then you can perform such a processing. So this can be helpful in some specific stencil computations. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, these can be separated in time, and as soon as you separate those in time, you have essentially two for loops. If it's a matrix, then you are going to have a nested for, etc. And these two steps can be individually parallelized, right? So the parallelization is going to be very similar to what we have discussed so far, but I'll just go through it for the sake of completeness. Yeah, and this vice versa dependence, black on red and red on white, red on black, is going to be the one that is going to get processed, and this gets repeated across iterations in the time domain so that you get the computation done. So let's quickly look at the such a processing, such as stencil computation. Let's go to main. What do I have in main is a matrix which has some floating point numbers. I need some sort of an error calculation to figure out that I have reached some sort of convergence or not. Alternatively, I can have number of iterations counted. So depending upon your problem definition, you might go for a number of iterations, a fixed number of iterations, where you are measuring, okay, how much error I reach if I increase number of iterations from 10 to 20 to 50 to 100. Or you might have, I'm going to have a while loop which is going to go until I reach a particular convergence criteria. In this case, let's say the diff across two iterations might turn out to be below a particular threshold, and then I'm going to stop. So you can have one of these, or you can as well have both of these. For example, in this case, I have an initialization, and then the do while loop is just checking for number of iterations. But this one that I have commented, let me just uncomment that because it might be unclear, where I say that while the diff is above certain epsilon, let's say 0.01, 0.001, I mean, 10 to the power minus 4, etc., and number of iterations is less than some number, right? So either way is fine, depending upon your application. And what does it do? It initializes A, which is just assigning it some initial values, which could be coming from your file, which could be random values, which could be specifically assigned as certain values, let's say a function of I and j when I'm writing to the matrix A. And inside the do while loop, I just have a call to red black, which is the actual function which is performing certain operation. And it returns this individual value called diff, which is the error processing. So I can use that for my diff calculation. And I also increment the number of iterations, which can be used for the end condition as well. In the end, I'm going to make use of that array that I have computed, which I'm not printing here. I'm just printing the number of iterations as well as the diff that I compute. So I'm just showing this more as a template, but you can try different combinations across. I mean, you can use the same template and change the code as required. The initialization part is very similar to what we saw in the context of matrices, matrix multiplication, so I'm not going to go over that. Let's focus specifically on the red-black part. The red-black part has this array, this matrix as a parameter, and then I'm going to specify the error as a local parameter inside this, which finally I am going to return. As far as the computation is concerned, it is clearly divided into two steps of two nested fors. right? One which is going to do a red computation, another going to do a black computation. Both of these are going to perform exactly the same computation or a slightly different one, depending upon how your problem statement demands. In this case, we are going to do exactly the same one. What is that computation? Well, a of ij is a function of some function of, let's say, 0.25 into a of ij minus, ii minus 1, that is the upper neighbor, then the left neighbor, then the right neighbor, and the below neighbor, right? So a function of all of these, and that I'm going to specify as the actual computation that I'm doing. This particular stencil computation might differ, doesn't matter, but even if it differs, the concept of red-black processing is still applicable in such cases. So I'm going to store this aij value in the previous variable, and I'm just going to use that for computing the diff across different elements. And that diff, as long as it is above some threshold, I'm going to make use of. There could be other ways in which the diff can be used, but I'm just making use of this in this particular way, where for individual elements, I'm going to compute what the diff is, and all these individual elements diff is going to get added until I reach certain criteria and so on. So this gets added for both the loops. Both the loops are going to be exactly the same. I mean, the body of the loops. The loops per se are also going to be the same. In this case, since I'm talking about the previous row and the previous row and next row, as well as previous neighbor as well as next neighbor, this boundary of 0 and n minus 1, I'm going to not worry about, but that needs to be taken care of in your actual processing. So therefore, the loop is going from 1 to n minus 2. So 0 and n minus 1, I'm going to not worry about. This boundary needs to be separately taken care of. So both ii and jj are going from 0 to n minus 2. The condition which separates this red and black is going to be only different, where here I'm going to say ii plus jj mod 2 equals 0. So these are the, let's say, the red ones, whereas mod 2 is non-zero, that is going to be the, which is equal to 1, is going to be the black one. So the nomenclature doesn't matter, one could be black, one could be red. And in the sequential setting, there is always a barrier across these two for loops. So that takes care of the sequential code, right? So parallelizing that is going to be kind of straightforward. It's just that we'll have to make sure that we do it. I'll just show it in this particular example. Maybe for the next example, I'll not show that too. So the first aspect that I do is, of course, the initialization I can do with parallel loop. And then as far as the red-black part is concerned, these two for loops, I'm going to just add hash pragma ACC parallel loop, and that should take care of parallelizing. Unfortunately, that doesn't turn out to be optimal, because as we discussed in the context of matrix multiplication, this might copy out the matrix from GPU to CPU unnecessarily. Therefore, I have to add a data clause which is just copying this once. I mean, compared to matrix multiplication, which was having just one kernel execution. In matrix multiplication, we had just one kernel execution which was running that triply nested loop, which was the untiled version. Here in this case, there is a time domain, and therefore in this time domain, the data clause is going to be much more important. I can have it outside the do while loop, because I copy that initial data, initial matrix to the GPU, and run all the time domain iterations while that matrix is there on the GPU, and copy it back only in the end, after all the iterations are done. I don't have to copy it back after every kernel invocation. Each red-black part is going to be one kernel invocation, for that matter, in our case, or rather two in this case, because I'm going to have two ACC parallel loops. So this part will be one kernel invocation on the GPU, and then this will be another kernel invocation on the GPU, right? And I don't want to copy it back for every iteration. So this data clause is going to be much more important in our numerical methods, because there is a time varying entity involved in this. So I create this matrix A on the GPU, and then I initialize it directly on the GPU. Why am I not copying it back? Because that matrix is actually changing. Why am I not copying it back? Well, I should copy it back, just that I am not using it here. Therefore, I have not copied it out, but otherwise a copy out of A can be also added there. All right, so if this initialization would have happened here on the CPU itself, let's say here somewhere, then I can just write copy of A, and that will make sure that it creates A, copies from CPU to GPU, as well as copies out of GPU to CPU. Okay, so this do while loop, we don't have to do anything with respect to the ACC pragmas. And these parts we have parallelized. So this makes sure, well, this doesn't always make sure that the matrix is going to be always available. We have to also add the present clause to make sure that it is actually not copied when you don't require it. Otherwise, it will get copied out of the GPU unnecessarily. Even across these two, it might get copied out to the GPU, copied out from GPU to CPU, and then again copied back, right? So this we have to be a little careful. So that those parts we have to add. So let's add that, and there are other optimizations which we can do. So in this case, I'm going to make sure that since the matrix is already created and then getting initialized, therefore it is already present, and I also need to specify possibly the dimensions of this matrix. The next part is about the nested loops, which is going to use a collapse clause. So that is going to be helpful from the perspective of performance. For 100, it might turn out to be okay. If you increase it further, then you have to be a little careful about the collapse clause, as we have been discussing. So initialization is okay. Let's come to these two parts. There is a little bit of difference between the two, which you might require when it comes to the use of diff. As far as the use of A is concerned, that is uniform, because A is already present on the GPU, as well as at the end of these two loops, that is the A matrix is present before the first loop on the GPU, as well as it should continue to remain on the GPU even at the end of the second loop. And therefore, as far as A is concerned, there is no real difference between the clauses between the two. Collapse clause also you can use in both the cases, because for loops are consecutive. In this case, there is no statement in between the two for loops. If there would have been some initialization between the two for loops, then the collapse clause will not be applicable. But the diff variable is the one which has a slight, well, let's say difference across the two loops, because the diff needs to be 0 when you enter the first loop, and whatever is the next final value of diff after the end of the second loop or a second loop nest, that needs to be copied back to the CPU, because you are going to make use of it here. Why? Well, in this case, I'm just using number of iterations, but if your condition would have been diff less than epsilon, which is likely to be the case in your applications, therefore we need diff on the CPU. So for that, I'm just going to use copy in of diff, which is going to be copy in of diff, which is going to just copy the 0 value to the variable in diff, and copy out of diff is the one which I'm going to use at the end of the second loop. So that is the only difference that is going to be required. Yeah, one thing which I didn't mention in the context of matrix multiplication, or rather I forgot, which I remember now, is that there is a 0 clause. So you can say 0:diff, and that will initialize diff to 0 value while copying it. So this clause can be used, for example, C matrix, which we were using, that could have used that 0 clause. So that is specified in the documentation, but unfortunately our Aqua compiler gave an error. It doesn't support that 0 clause. But in case your compiler on your laptop or somewhere else supports that 0 clause, you might be able to make use of that to reduce, let's say, some effort in initialization. So in this case also, we need not initialize it to 0, but just use 0:diff, and that will initialize that particular variable or even the matrix or an array to 0. The rest of the processing is kind of what we have already discussed, so that part is all right. Okay, so this is all right. Let's come back to the slides. And one of the ways in which this red black can be very nicely extended is you could generalize it. Right? So here we said that there are only these two processings happening. But what if the it's a, let's say, a higher degree, or rather, let me put it this way, that you are possibly going to make use of more number of neighbors than only these two. For example, you are not only using I minus 1, j minus 1, I plus 1, j plus 1, but you are probably making two such, making use of two such neighbors, maybe I minus 1, I minus 2, I plus 1, I plus 2, as well as in the j direction. And that is going to happen for each of the rows. Right? So just specifying it at as two colors is not going to be helpful, but I can possibly now make use of three colors, maybe red, black, and green, and that is going to help you decompose this operation into three, or slice this processing into three different for loop nests, which are separated in time, separated by two barriers, and that will still allow you to perform the processing such that red is going to read only from black and green, black is going to read only from red and green is going to read only from red and black. And that will make sure that you will be able to perform this processing further in parallel. Of course, the number of such entities that you can process, the number of such cells is going to reduce. It will get 1/3 on an average, but you will still be able to perform better than just having this loop carry dependence and not performing any parallelization at all. So think about how do you generalize this to k colors when you have, let's say, k neighbors or k rows or k columns being used for computing this ij entry. Right? So this is one definite extension that you can do for red-black processing. Okay, another stencil computation is going to be in the context of 3D. So we talked about 2D, but I'm going to now switch gears and talk in the context of 3D. And one of the important aspects that comes in is in the 3D heat calculation. Right? So this method is again a variant of the stencil computation, where instead of using ij, I'm now going to use ijk as a three-dimensional matrix, and each element is going to depend upon, let's say, 26 of its neighbors in the 3D grid. And I mean, application might look very different compared to what we had in the context of, let's say, 2D matrices. But from the perspective of parallelization, from the perspective of mapping this stencil computation to OpenACC, the processing, or even for OpenMP and MPI, there will be large amount of similarities. Right? So one of the ways in which that can be done is, again, you have some sort of red-black processing, which is helping you in performing the operations depending upon how you are using these neighbors. Right? So that is one way in which you can take care of the loop carry dependence. Alternatively, if your heat equation is such that you can afford to, and if you have space available, you might be able to make use of a separate 3D matrix where you read from the original matrix and make a copy of it when you compute the next iterations matrix, right? So in one iteration, you use one matrix, let's say A as the input and B as the output, right? Where B is going to be write only, A is going to be read only, and therefore there is no data race across the two. So you have separated this not in terms of time, but in terms of space, and therefore there is no data race. Right? In the context of red-black, we separated the processing in terms of time. Now we are separating in terms of space. A and B matrices are separate. So this can have a very nice impact in terms of that this is read only, so I don't have to synchronize, and this write only is going to be parallel with respect to ijk, if at all. But if it is not, if there is a dependence because of writing to the same memory location. Well, in this case, it is not going to be there because you are just going to read, and every IJK thread is going to write to the same memory location. So that is not different memory location. So therefore, this is not going to have any synchronization requirement except for this separation of memory locations, right? So this might turn out to be good from the parallelization perspective, but also, as we discussed in the context of MPI, your convergence criteria now might be reached a little later because you are using only the older values. You are not making use of the newly computed values in B, right? So you have all the newly computed values in B. If you had made use of them in the current iteration itself, you would have probably reached convergence faster. So the number of iterations that you might require might turn out to be larger, just that the parallelization in one iteration turns out to be better. So there is a trade-off between the two now. So your individual loop has become now wider in terms of parallelization. So its length has reduced, but the number of such iterations is going to be larger. So the overall time is going to be a multiplicative factor of the size of individual iteration and the number of iterations. Whereas when you are using only a single matrix A and you were doing in situ updates using some sort of synchronization, which could be coarse grained using barriers like red-black processing, or it could be fine grained by using a critical section or an atomic instruction in the context of, let's say, OpenMP as well as OpenACC. In that case, the amount of processing that you do inside one iteration might turn out to be larger. I mean, the time required will be larger, not the amount of processing, the time required, because you are performing synchronization also within one iteration. But the number of iterations will turn out to be smaller because you are going to reach the convergence criteria faster. So again, the trade-off is going to weigh either this way or the other way, depending upon the problem, depending upon the elements which are present, depending upon the processing that you are doing, let's say in this case 3D heat wave equation. So this needs to be checked, and you should definitely experiment with these different forms of keeping a copy or not. The other downside of keeping a copy is, of course, that you are increasing the amount of space by 2, and therefore the kind of matrices that you can accommodate in your data might have half the size in this particular case when you have another matrix B compared to when you had a single matrix A. So yeah, so this is what I wanted to convey. Otherwise, from the parallelization perspective, this is going to be exactly similar to what we had from the context of any other stencil computation. It could be 2D or 3D, just that the indices are going to be different. So you will have Hashpragma ACC parallel loop, and you will have triply nested loop. So the collapse clause will come into play. You will be able to make use of tiling for that matter, do play around with it. Then there will be a data clause, which will be, again, there will be a do while loop. So the data clause should be outside. You copy the matrix A once, and the copy back, let's say, the same matrix at the end of the do while loop. If you are using in situ update, if you are using both A and B, then you need to copy back A and well, yeah. So what do you copy back might differ depending upon how many iterations you have. If the number of iterations is odd, then your output will be in B. Whereas if the number of iterations is even, the output will be in A itself, because you will exchange the roles of B and A in alternative iterations. Another way to get rid of this problem is to copy B back to A as input and use A always as the input and B as the output. But then there will be large amount of copying that might be required. So it will be easier if you can switch gears and use A as the input in odd iterations and A as the output in the even iterations, and vice versa. So this that processing, and then you have to optimize the data that is copying in and copy out of the GPU. Again, very similar to what we had, just that the conditional the convergence criteria needs to be requiring some computation on the GPU, where we had the diff in the context of red-black. Similarly, there will be some sort of convergence criteria for this one, If you have fixed number of iterations, that is also another way, in which case you don't have to compute the diff. And the number of iterations can be nicely computed directly on the CPU rather than doing this part on the GPU. GPU can just take care of running the kernels. Right? So that is one way in which this can be parallelized. All right, so this is what I wanted to talk about for red-black processing as well as the 3D heat. We'll look at some other numerical methods in the next class. See you.